So, our speaker today is Maria Toso. She's a yoga teacher, a life coach, and a writer. She's originally from Denmark. She was trained in the United States. She lived in the US and Minnesota for several years, and now she's back in her native Copenhagen, but she's also back here teaching for a while and running some yoga classes and yoga training. She's the founder and owner of Breath of Light Yoga School. She's been practicing and guiding yoga and meditation since 1990. Through meditation, asana practice, she leads her students into presence with compassion and wisdom, showing them their own inherent connection to the divine. She teaches meditation and yoga at places ranging from addiction recovery center to universities. She works with at-risk youth programs, yoga students, private businesses, etc., etc. And she also trains students to become 200-hour yoga teachers and meditation teachers through the Breath of Life Therapeutic Yoga School. She helps her students and clients achieve solid ground within and stay peaceful and grounded, and you can find out more about her at her website, mariatoso.com. Maria.
Thank you. Okay, so I need to sit in my yoga position to teach properly. So she said it all, so I don't have to introduce myself much. And what I want to focus on with you guys this morning is emotional triggers. And that is a theme that's been in my life since the very beginning when I started teaching. My first introduction into spirituality was when my father died when I was 17. I lived in Copenhagen, but had come to Texas, of all places, to be an exchange student. And during that year, my dad died, and it was a shock for me because no one had told me that he had had several heart attacks. They had protected me from that, thinking it wouldn't lead to his death, but it did. And when I came back to Copenhagen after that, I had a series of dreams where he very clearly told me, I'm still here. I don't have a body, but I'm still here. All you have to do is call me. That was still the phone back then. And all you have to do is know that I'm right over here. And when I would talk to the adults around me about that, there would be, you're just grieving, it's a little nuts. My grandfather before me had had a child die when she was quite young, and this child had come to him like she was still alive, and he said, well, I'm crazy, I need medication. So he was put on medication for having seen his dead daughter. So when I came and talked about communicating with my dead father, there was no one who would say to me, well, his spirit still is alive. There is communication that goes beyond the physical. I was sent to a psychologist, and she said, this is just a child grieving, so it'll pass. But that wasn't really satisfying to me, so I was quite lonely with those experiences. And within a couple of years of that, I happened to be in Germany, where I visited a friend that I had been in classical ballet training with most of my childhood. She was now a cat in the musical Cats. And backstage was a Tibetan Buddhist. He was German, but he had been trained in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, guiding meditation. So we were asked to come to the Buddhist Center in Hamburg. And for the first time, I tapped back into something that had been with me since childhood, which was sort of, I don't want to call it an all-knowing intuition, but an intuition that helped me greatly when I wanted to find the candy that my dad would hide in the basement when he would travel to Germany and come back, because candy was cheaper and bigger quantities in Germany than in Denmark. He had a shop in the basement, and he would hide it down there, and I would see him walk down there, but I didn't know where it was. So I would stand in the center of his shop very quietly until I knew exactly where it was. So that intuition had disappeared in the teenage years, and I would attribute that in great part to drinking alcohol, which there's a lot of in Denmark in the teenage years. When I meditated for the first time in Germany, it was like that channel opened back up again, and suddenly it was a kid-like, be like the little children, energy within me that I had back. And over the next couple of years, I went back to Denmark, where I was living at the time, where the main Buddhist center, Tibetan Buddhist center, was. And I started training there and learning to meditate. My life's path and mission was sort of given to me, the hint of it anyway, by one of these lamas that came from Tibet. And he explained to us, and it's still with me, this image, you are the light. And you were talking about this, Tina. The divine light within is who we each are. That light, just like in an old-fashioned movie theater. Now, I'm born in 1970, so I actually went to movie theaters where the light was projected from the back through the movie running, projected out on the silver screen. And so he gave us that image. You are that light. And whatever you're experiencing is the movie that's running, and that's the content of your mind. And now later I got the language that some scouras, patterns, experiences that you've had will be projected out there. And what we tend to do as human beings is watch our light come at us. And if something is happening up there that we don't like, we run up to the screen and try to fix it. In Denmark, and I was growing up, very old-fashioned movie theaters, if a fly happened to come into the movie theater and crawl across the light, it would be moving around on the movie screen. And we would, of course, be able to remove that from the screen, and we would know that's what was happening. But it's a little harder to know as human beings that when someone out there is triggering us, and this is where it comes, the emotional triggers come in, that it's something within that's been triggered. And now, as part of the Buddhist training, it became clear that if I wanted my intuition, which was a powerful tool that I believe all kids are born with, and is to some degree bred out of us through our education that's very focused on developing the left brain versus the autistic, oneness, God-connected brain. So if that is no longer accessible to us and we try to cope with the intellect, we don't have that channel of all-knowing, but it is part of what the human constitution is. So I realized if I want that part of myself, that channel, alcohol can't be part of my life. So at a pretty young age, and in a country that is heavily drinking, I think the Danish youth might be some of the heaviest drinkers probably in the world, along with maybe some of the other Scandinavian countries. It's quite extreme. So to choose not to do that was quite the thing. So the next thing I learned in the Buddhist center was a meditation called the Dorje meditation. And the meditation would guide us into visualizing a white Buddha over the top of our head, sitting in a lotus with his big toe kind of pointing out over the lotus edge like this. He had the letter Shri in his heart, and as you said this 100-syllable mantra, which was easy to learn when you're 20, I don't think I could learn it now, but it's still with me. When you would say that, supposedly the letter Shri would spin, create a clearing, light-filled nectar that would come down through your body. So it's very, there's a lot of visualization in Tibetan Buddhism and the Vajrayana tradition, but essentially what you would sit there and do would be to scan your body. Not so different from if any of you are familiar with Vipassana. Many mindfulness traditions also have you feel and scan your body. What becomes obvious if you start to feel and scan your body is where something is contracted, where something feels nervous or scared. And that is probably why alcohol becomes introduced at the time when it does, and for many people become a lifelong habit because we don't want to feel those places. If we strip ourselves of the numbing agents, and there are many more than alcohol, here's one, that's mine. You know, that's one I have to really watch, and that might be true for you too. But anything that takes us away from feeling those places prevent us from finding out what's really going on there. So when I started teaching yoga teacher training, jumping quite far ahead, but just to say, I used a snow globe. Do you guys know what a snow globe looks like? Well, you shake it and then the snow. And I found one, I was so excited when I saw it. It had a little golden Buddha at the center, and then it had the snow. So similar to what you were talking about, Tina, we in yoga would say that we are the Buddhahood, the fully enlightened, the divine light. And when I say namaste in yoga, it's the divine essence within me that recognizes it. And we know that feeling when we look into someone's eyes and they almost look familiar, like I know you from somewhere, right? And that is, of course, true when we see each other from that divine perspective because it's the same essence. Now, if the snow is too thick, then I'm going to see you through that. And I'm going to interpret what you're doing through the layers of my thoughts. The definition of yoga in the Yoga Sutras is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. It means that yoga is the cessation of the fluctuation of the mind. So when all of that falls down, then we come to that place deep within where we are again one with the light. Now, I would say that accessing that place within myself is harder now than it was when I started meditating in 1989. And I think one of the reasons is there's a lot more that's pulling us out here, and I would point to the phone as one of those things, so that we have less contact with that place. When I first started traveling back and forth between Europe and the United States, you would sit for 8 hours on a flight, and there were no movies and no phones, so what did you do? You talked to your neighbor. You would have 8-hour conversations often. And what happens when you're interacting, you're that present with someone else because nothing else is distracting you? Well, where two or more are present, also out of the Bible, there I am. What is the I am? Again, the divinity is arising within. So that no longer happens, right? When I sit in public transportation in Copenhagen, there are no conversations. And there's not that dropping into the pause of just being and staring out of the window, which is also sort of a recentering. So the natural recentering that we used to have as human beings is happening less and less and less, to the point that it might not be happening much at all. And I brought this up here for another good reason, not just to keep pointing at it with a blamatory finger. So in starting to work with the energy that was in the body, it also became obvious that something was triggered and caused a reactivity that for a while I thought was all the other person's fault. I would say for quite some time. And it took a while to pull that back and say, what is it that is repeatedly triggered here? And my biggest trigger episodes happened right here in Linden Hill. So it's interesting that I'm being called back across the river to kind of confront my initial experience, where I had to own this is not just my then husband's fault. This is something in me that's being triggered. I got married in 1998, and we moved to an apartment here in Linden Hills. And he would travel a lot and forget to call me, and I knew nobody. So I would have big freakouts about, I moved all the way over here and I'm sitting alone in this apartment and you're not there, which, you know, you can understand and empathize with. And yet the level of desperation that was triggered within me was sort of disproportionate. I had to finally own that. Now, it was through breath work that I got underneath what's really going on here. Have any of you ever done breathwork sessions? I'm not going to be able to explain exactly physiologically and spiritually what happens. I can just tell you what the experience is of connecting more deeply with breath through a faster breathing pattern. Somehow you get into the places within yourself where something happened at a younger age that is still in there like a contracted place. In my case, what I remember through breath work, which I was aware of because people had told me about it, but I had no conscious memory of it, was being hospitalized for quite a long time at a very young age. And in a hospital in Denmark, where I later found out by meeting one of the nurses who worked there, that the policy at the time was do not give compassion, empathy, or hold the kids, because then they will get weak. They have to be strengthened. So it was months in the hospital without any kind of, I'm here, you're okay, I'm going to tuck you in. So that was what was being reactivated in my relationship. And out of then learning to first do yoga and then teach yoga and then teach yoga teacher training, and as I work with more and more clients, I realized, well, I'm not the only one, and that is important. Tina spoke about that importance of realizing I'm not this unique, super crazy person that's reacting just because I'm not getting a text in a timely manner. Most people have some place within that will bring that kind of reaction up within. And it can be, it has nothing to do with, Tina, you were talking about the vets that come back with, very serious experiences that, that are hard to understand because they're so far out of the realm of where most of us live. But it doesn't have to take that violent or extreme of an experience to create a trigger that can make you react very, very deeply to the point that you might be ready to blow up a relationship or leave a job or cut ties with your family because the feelings that are being triggered are so uncomfortable. And as long as we believe that it's the other person's fault, that doesn't mean that someone out there might not be doing something inappropriate, but the trigger in the body within points to something old that happened. And as I started working, at first it was sort of a roundabout ways as we were talking about some scars and old patterns that live in the body and what might that be about. It was sort of surprising how everyone can have these deep wounds that you lash out, and it's like you're suddenly putting out a pair of glasses, or you can think of the snow globe again, and you're seeing another person or situation through that lens. And it is no longer proportionate to what's actually happening. Now, how do we know if we're triggered or if someone is really doing something unreasonable? I would say it can be both at the same time. How we know if we're triggered is a feeling inside the body of sort of an out of controlness that's starting to happen. So, has anybody here felt triggered before I even start to describe what that is? Anybody triggered? Few of you? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? 6 people? Maybe more? Okay. So the way it feels in the body, for those of you that may not feel like you're getting triggered, is often like a contraction. It can happen like a contraction in the throat, in the heart, in the belly. The moment you contract, what does the poor heart do? It starts to beat faster because now all the fluids in the body need to be pumped around still, and you're contracting, so it's not able to move. So the heart beats faster. What happens when the heart beats faster? Maybe your breath starts to go faster. And now you're starting to lose touch with exactly that light within. Now you're out here and you're reacting from the point of view of what is being triggered. I'll give you a very personal example here, and I think it's okay. My mom recently died of dementia. Well, I don't know if dementia killed her, but she had dementia for some years before she died in June. Prior to that, my sister, who was in Denmark, went to take care of her for a week because her husband was out of town. I was abroad, and I wrote to her, and it was in Danish, but it was a word that means somewhere between sweet and nice. So I used this word sød in Danish. I said, "You're so sød that you're staying up there for a whole week and taking care of her. I know it's hard. I mean, my mom would go to the bathroom and come back out and ask, 'Who are you?' So it was like she would know her one minute, not know her the next. So I use this word sød. You're so sød that you're taking care of mom for a week. I get an email back that says, "Yeah, right, I'm always so sød." Like, okay, I was just thanking you, what happened. But knowing enough about triggers for my own self, instead of retorting like, "Oh my God, I was just trying to express some gratitude for what you're doing, what's the exclamation mark about?" And so I called her instead and said, "Are you willing to kind of sit with that for a second? Like, what happened there that me using this word that means something in between kind and sweet for being up there, why is that making you mad at me?" And she was willing. So I guided her into her body and feeling her breath and out of the current story and just feeling, where does this show up in the energy field of your body when I say this word sød? You're so sød. And she said it all contracted in her heart. And it's like, what is there? Is there a story there that has nothing to do with right now? What memories is this bringing up? And she said, "I'm like 7, you're 9. And my mom had a little social circle. And she brought us in to kind of present us to her little social circle. And she put her hand on my sister's shoulder and said, 'Oh, this is my sød daughter, nice, sweet daughter.' And then she said, 'But,' and then she put her hand on me, a little taller, I was 2 years older, 'This is my interesting daughter.'" So in her mind, sød was not something you wanted to be. You wanted to be interesting. And for whatever reason, my mom had used those words. Very inappropriate. My sister's now in her early 50s. She has an MBA, she's running a company, she's educated, calm, has a lot of employees. But the moment her older sister uses that word, she's pissed off, right? So I let her sit with that, and I sat with her, and instead of feeling, God, you're so unreasonable, as shaming, like you were talking about, Tina, and not shaming. So instead of shaming, I was like, that is total overreaction. It's not my fault that she called you so, I'm just praising you for watching her for a week. Instead, I sat with her too, and I cried too, because suddenly I could feel what is it like to be 7, and whatever it actually meant in my mom's mind, we can't know now, but it certainly was perceived as a diss. Once she had allowed that 7-year-old to grieve, we did it again. I said, feel your body, and I'm going to say this word again. Du er så sød. You're so sweet. And she sat and she said, it's not so bad to be sweet. So the charge was off. That doesn't mean that next time someone uses that particular word, there won't be a little ruffling of her feathers potentially. It could even happen again that there's a contraction, because as I've come to learn with emotional triggers, it's not a one-time thing that you realize what you're really reacting to, and now I'll never be upset if my boyfriend doesn't text me on time. But I will know the signals in my body, and I will know that I will cleverly, in my experience, in my own life, and in watching other people, attract just the kind of man who won't text me when I need it. And then I could write a manual for him. If you want to be my boyfriend, here's what you do. And I could maybe bully him into submission. My ex-husband had one of those nerdy little watches with a calculator that you had in the 80s. Right? He still had it in the 90s. And he set a timer. Must call Maria, at 8 noon and 5 when I'm traveling, or she will have a fit. It sort of worked. It became a little laughable, like 12 ... like my kids would say, hi, I love you. It's like, you don't really mean it. You're just doing that because I told you to. What I have learned now is helping me heal those places within is, first of all, they may always be there. They may always need my love, because they may be so ingrained at such a young age that they may need to be held with love and with that divine within myself forever. I have a friend here in town, a mutual friend with Gary, who has worked with this her whole life. She's in her 80s now. And she recently shared with me that she went to a friend's house and they were chopping vegetables. The friend made a negative comment about how she chopped the vegetables. It shut her down completely. She could barely talk. She was completely contracted. The evening was ruined. It happened to be Christmas Eve, so it was really not a good evening to not be able to talk to anybody and be pissed the whole evening. She went home and it was like, what just happened? So she had to do that process of saying, okay, it's not about calling my friend who criticized how I chopped carrots and let her have it. It's about finding out why that was so upsetting. So at 80 years old, she taps into the body, feels where the contraction is, and remembers being 5. And her dad is in the war, and her mom is alone with 2 kids, and her mom is screaming at her in the kitchen, and she's just trying to help, and she's shooing her out. It was probably just a glib on the screen for the mom. For her, it was, I really wanted to help, and I can't do anything right. And I was just putting my best effort into the carrot chopping, and see, I can't even do that. Yeah? So I am giving you that example because I used to think emotional triggers, when I really get it right, they'll go away. I won't have them anymore. Then I'll start living my life. Then I'll be able to be in relationship and really be happy forever, and I won't have to deal with these things that are in the body. And I don't believe that anymore, and maybe because when I used to think that was the case, I was in my 20s, and now I'm almost 53. So I have come to the point where I'm like, no, I don't think that emotional triggers is something that we want to get rid of. But if we use them with love, it actually can make us grow in self-compassion, in self-love, both for self and others. Sometimes we're on the receiving end of a trigger. We can feel it. Somebody is seeing us through a lens, and they're interpreting who we are through that lens, and it doesn't really matter what we do because they're stuck in that lens unless they're willing to do the work of finding out where that's really coming from. And of course, you can't force somebody else to do that work, right? So that was maybe a little bit more of the background of how I have worked with emotional triggers and how I work with it in people. I have so many examples, so I'll just give you more of a broad stroke of all the examples that I have seen with clients. That whatever you're reacting to in a strong way where the body is really involved, if you can get out of the present day, whatever your event is with a person, and feel it in the body without the story, on the physical level of contraction, there will very likely either be a memory, something it reminds you of, or even if there isn't, simply being with it, being present with it. And what is present? Present is the light within that's now enveloping those very places that we learn from such a young age to numb out. What do we give a kid who's just had a shot at the doctor's? Sugar, right? I mean, they have them. Here, take a sucker. You're crying, the sucker will help you feel better. What if we said, oh, that hurt. Let me hold you. I love you. I'm going to send love into you. Where does it hurt? How does it feel? Where is it? Rarely do we do that, right? Even in our, movies, what do we see? The hero, give me another one, is sitting at the bar. And that has become some of the ways in which we numb out, is how can I not feel this pain within? And if we're just the pain and we're not working with aligning and identifying with and becoming grounded in the light within, it's totally understandable because the pain is too great. The pain of being triggered is too great to cope with. So I would say the only hope is to connect with the divine so deeply, whatever we name the divine, to hold us in that moment and to take us through the trigger the way it moves without hopefully lashing out and creating a lot of bad karma out there. And even something as simple as a screaming match with a partner or a family member can have ripple effects, into days and weeks or years. So the degree to which we can contain the lashing out and being with it, there is a shift that can happen. When I feel an emotional trigger in my body, and I don't know how you feel it, but it feels like a contraction, like something that's frozen and energy can't move through. My presence is the light, is the warmth that can start to melt that, like an ice cube that you put out in the sunlight. It's not going to melt immediately, but it'll melt a little. And a little more sun, it'll melt a little more. And at some point, the ice melts so much, what does it become? Tears, right? And that is how I've experienced both in myself and with clients or just friends and family that we worked on with, that when you're really with the pain that's in the body, it's no longer anger, it's actually sadness. Because what we were not experiencing at the time when it formed was often some version of, I'm not loved, I'm not safe, I don't belong. It can be as simple as the other kid's not wanting to play with you. That can play out. You can be 60 years old, hold all the degrees in the world, make all the money in the world. You walk into a room and there's a group of women and they're not looking and they won't talk to you and they diss you in some way, and you're the little kid in the sandbox again. And then you want a cocktail because that's too horrible, right? So we can also start to apply a great deal of compassion toward addictions, which is also fraught with shame. If you eat too much, if you drink too much, if you're on your phone too much, if you whatever too much, shop too much, porn too much, all of those ways in which we distract away from how we're feeling, there's shame associated with that. But if we can recognize it within ourselves and within others, the pain is so great that if we don't have a relationship to the divine core within, we can't withstand the pain. So what I was hoping to do with you guys today was have you experience, and I know many of you are experienced meditators, so I don't mean to preach to the choir, but I still think it's a good exercise to both experience what is the channel within where we're in our heads and where we're in the thoughts and we're in the stories we're making up about a given situation, and what does it feel like to be fully present within? The only hope of mastering, if that's the right word, because I don't know that healing is the right word, because that would somehow insinuate that you can get to a point where you no longer have those triggers, and I just don't believe that in what I've seen. But mastering your triggers is, okay, I know I want to lash out. I'm not going to. I'm going to love myself through this, because I know that I am the divine within, and the divine is love and is presence, and I have to be present to be able to do it. If I don't practice daily presence to some degree, it's going to be really hard to call upon self-presence when the shit hits the fan. And our modern lifestyle is very, very, very little quiet introspection. It's just not built into our world anymore. And like I said, just sitting on a bus for 15 minutes could be enough to sort of ground in yourself before you come home. But if you're busy on the phone instead, that isn't happening. That connection to the kingdom lies within. The light is within. Okay? Any comments on any of this? I do see some nodding. That's always nice, some recognition. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to need to speak into the microphone. I forgot.
I immediately related to when you said the thing about the frozen heart or the frozen feeling. I just recently had that exact feeling, literally yesterday. And so it was just so nice to have a very simple way to heal that and to aid that feeling of frozenness, is just to be
Yeah.
it's inside, it's gonna melt, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very
I love that.
special.
Yeah. And
That's
I would say most human beings who are not completely numbed out probably feel some degree of triggers almost daily. So let's work with that instead of shame that. Anyone else? No? Okay. So let's try and do this, if you're willing. Close your eyes. Find some degree of uprightness in your spine if you're able. You might just kind of lift the top of your head a little closer to the ceiling and let your bottom sink into the chair. Yeah? And now bring awareness into your feet. Wherever they are, if you pull them up or if your feet are on the floor, whether you're wearing shoes or you have bare feet. Feel the connections to your feet, your toes, the soles of your feet and the tops of your feet. See if you can feel the tips of your toes. What would it be like to poke the tip of your big toe on the right side with a needle? Yeah, that big toe, that tip. Just to feel an aliveness and an awakeness within the feet. And up through the legs, lower legs, shin bones, calf muscles, knees. And the thighs, inner and outer thighs, front and back, buttocks, sit bones, abdomen. And feel the belly. And how is the belly? Is it soft and relaxed like a little baby? Or is there a little tension living here, maybe chronically? Just what's going on. We're just visiting every part to see what's up. Feel into the low back, mid back, upper back, between the shoulder blades, up through the back of the neck, and front side of the body, belly, belly button, solar plexus, right side of the chest, left side, throat, shoulders, arms, upper arms, elbows, forearms, palm of the hands, back of the hands, tips of the fingers. Feel the palm of the hands a little more. That's one of the places where we really can get in touch with present moment life energy. And feel the throat, sides of the neck, back of the neck, jaw, lips, nose, eyes, forehead, the right ear, the left ear, the whole of the scalp. Embody the whole body. And now draw the awareness into the center. Try to become aware of the center of your own head. Pulling, pulling, pulling awareness from outside yourself to the inside. And that was just a few minutes of becoming more present in the body. Noticing the breath inside the nose, in the abdomen, in the chest. And now bring awareness to the most irritating person in your life, the one that's disrupting your peace. The one that if only they would do it differently, you would feel better. And let it rip. You're inside yourself, nobody's here. This is your little process. We're purposely triggering ourselves now, just to see what that feels like. There's that person. There's clearly something wrong with them. They're clearly not treating you right. What is going on in there? Think of the worst thing they've done. The really mean thing, the one that really hurt. And now feel the body. Where is the body reacting to that memory, to that perceived insult? And put your hand on that spot. And acknowledge to that part, I feel this, I notice this. This is in me, this is in my energy system that something is reacting. And even the thought of this person, they're not even here, they're not doing that thing right now, but still there's a disruption in the energy system. Okay. Now let's dismiss that person. See if you can just sort of push them aside for a moment and just draw the awareness now into the center of that point within that reacted to what that person did. And say to that place within, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm with you. I'm just with you. I'm here. Not picking up my phone, I'm not pouring a drink. I'm with you. Imagine your own presence as light. Imagine the point that's contracted and fearful in reaction as an ice cube. And you're now pouring, radiating this part of yourself with light. And now sometimes a point like this within simply needs to be held like a scared, contracted child. And sometimes this point within might want to share a story, might want to share what this reminds them of. So see what's going on for you without forcing anything. What does this feeling in the body remind you of? This is probably not the first time you have felt this. You may even have felt this with someone other than the current irritating person. And we're just giving this contracted part of the energy system an opportunity to show us if there is a memory that wants to be known, but we're also letting it be perfectly okay for this part of us to simply be held in love. So I invite you to say to this place within, I love you. I'm here. I've got you. I feel you. I'm with you. I know it hurts, and I'm not going anywhere. It's futile to act this out. You've done it. It has never worked. So let me hold you in love instead. Let me rock you through this one. I'm here. I'm so sorry you're in pain like this, but I can promise you I will not abandon you. I will not numb you out so I don't have to feel you. I love you so much that I'm willing to be with you. And I'm sorry for the times I wasn't willing to be with you when you felt this way because I was ashamed of you. Or because I believed that if just this other person would change, I wouldn't feel this. This is in me. I'm willing to hold it. Notice if anything is shifting. And bringing light and awareness and even love and presence to a place that hurts can make it feel like it's amplifying. Why am I doing this? Now I feel it even more. This is worse. Continue to say, I love you and I'm here. I've got you. I'm with you. Keep breathing into this place. Let your breath be light. Let your breath be your connection to spirit, to the divine, drawing from the well of light, divinity within yourself, and pulling it into the place that hurts. Exhaling the fear, the contraction. Inhaling loving presence. And now we're going to do a little breathing exercise together to bring, sort of turbocharge the capacity to bring light, love, spirit, breath into this area. In my native tongue, the word for spirit and breath is actually the same. In the Latin language, that's true as well. So the breathing practice is brief. It's a faster paced breath, and we do it in and out through the mouth. With every in-breath, we draw the breath directly into the most pain-contracted place, and with every exhale, we help it release some of its pain. So I have a little recording that I'm going to play that is the pace of the breath so that I can guide you simultaneously. So see if you can follow along. If it becomes uncomfortable, you just stop. In. Into the place, out. More in, out. Light in, fear out. Visualize illuminating this place within. Light accessing the nucleus of this pain. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Filling feeling of this pocket of pain. Visualizing the release on the exhale. Staying inside. Let the sound of the breath be the mantra. All right, breathe all the way in. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Fill up, fill up, fill up. All the way into the nucleus of this place of contraction. We'll exhale audibly together. Take a couple of normal breaths. And then drop into the exhale and stay in the breathless state for a moment. In the silence within. We're holding the breath for just 30 seconds. If you need to breathe, you can just do it. Now put your hand again on the contracted place and take a deep breath in. Fill it up one more time. Exhale with an Om this time. Om. Sit for a moment in the inner environment. Still noticing the place that you just did a little love treatment on, but simultaneously become aware of the whole of the body. The hands and the feet, the arms and the legs, buttocks, torso, head, neck, and shoulders. And before we come back out of this exercise, communicate one last time to this pain place. I notice you, I feel you, and I love you, and I'm here. And I'm going to love you through this as many times as you need. What you need and want and cry for is unconditional love. And I'm here to give that to you. You no longer have to beg for it from the outside, cleverly choosing people who cannot give it to you so that you re-experience the original pain. That's done. I will be with you now, and I will love you unconditionally, and that means there is no end point to my love. I'm not loving you so that you will stop feeling pain. I'm loving you because I love you, and because love is who I am, and love is who we are, and only love heals. I'm sorry for all the times I shamed you for being in pain. I know where the pain is coming from. I have an idea. And now I will love you and be with you. Sometimes I will slip up. Old patterns die hard. But with increased awareness, I will do it less and be with you more and hold you more, because I'm learning to be the loving, unconditionally loving parent that you may not have had. And from there, open your eyes. Know that you're very likely in the company of a lot of people who carry a lot of pain. And even the people that trigger this pain within you probably acted out of their own pain. And perhaps you can set a commitment to loving yourself through it now, using the tools that are available for self-love. There are so many of them, but they must be practiced. So before I give it over to Tina, who has a little announcement, I just want to let you know that I have a breathing class where we work with this afternoon at 1:30 in St. Paul. So if you're interested in doing more of this work, you might consider joining that, and you'd be so welcome. And I'm going to hand it over to Tina.
Okay, thank you, Maria Toso. And she's going to do our closing in just a couple of minutes. Ooh, it's time for our offering. I know we're all in this beautiful space, but I encourage you to dig deep, because to be in this space, having these moments is what we want to perpetuate. So dig deep. You can go on our website as well and be a regular donor. And your donations help us keep these events alive and help keep this beautiful building together. So anything you can give is appreciated. Our ushers will come forth and pass out the baskets.
Light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my home, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. Shine. The road is dark, the way was long. Kept on singing that freedom song. My God promised me a rainbow sign. Just gotta let my little light shine. Don't give up, don't back down. Don't let the liar turn you around. My heart's fixed, made up in mind. I'm going out and letting my little light shine. Sure gonna let my little light shine. All in the streets, I'm gonna let it shine. On the battlefield, I'm gonna let it shine. See, now I ain't gonna fight no rich man's war. That ain't what God wanna use me for. Killing folk ain't in my life.
Oh, so if you'll join me in blessing the offering and repeat after me. Perfect love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. Oh, amen. Okay, now it's time for our closing.
Let's come up and hold hands. And I thought that song that you happened to just play now was so appropriate, right? Because it is from the light within that we can heal all things, each other, but first and foremost our own pain within. So how about we sing it? Don't we all know it? The original kind of version? Yeah? Are you up for it? Did you notice what song it was? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more time, louder. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you so much. Woo!